You're watching Fantasy Studs and Suds, only on Fantasy Now Plus.
Hey.
Got those technical difficulties worked out, I believe. I at least hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that was a last second adjustment on my side to get this. Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Fantasy Studs and Suds. I am Jeffrey Crisp, and alongside of me is my co-host C.J. Pudge LaPage.
Who's a little more red than extra because I thought I was about to do the show alone.
Yeah, I'm sorry I put you through that, but we're here, and we'll try to also keep this show under 1.5 hours. But our segments today will include Fantasy Studs. We're going to begin our focus on sophomore studs, and we're going to start today with wide receivers. Additionally, we're going to talk about Frank Ragnow, Fantasy Leagues, positional scoring rules, player shares, our selection for beer of the week, and then onions. So, Pudge, ignoring the weather and your red face, how is everything in your world?
I was just graced by one of my very good friends that is proposing to his to-be wife this weekend, and put the show in jeopardy for a while. It's been a very hectic day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Today was I was scrambling ever since 6 o'clock this morning. Yesterday, I was running errands all day long and didn't get back until late. And then this morning, I was playing catch up all day, so it was really last minute to start to get everything together, and then to have those technical difficulties certainly was a problem. Also, I'm dealing with a little bit of shoulder pain. Earlier this week, I went outside to play with our dogs, and my dog Molly loves to play catch. And I went to throw the ball, tweaked my shoulder, and the ball didn't go very far. And she just kind of stared at me. Usually I can throw the ball, a good, 90, 100 feet. And she just stared at me. And then she finally kind of wandered over, got the ball, looked at me again with a WTF look, and then wandered over to my wife. So I was literally benched after one play, one errant throw, and I was benched for my wife. So, when you hear about some of these quarterbacks, who have a very short leash and a very easy hook, now I know what that feels like, because it was literally one throw. But hey, I was Molly's dud for the week. So moving on. So on to Fantasy Studs. So in Dynasty, the focus this time of year is predominantly on rookies. In early summer, however, second-year players, they're often ignored. Now, while some players have phenomenal rookie campaigns, we also know that others, they tend to, after those rookie campaigns, they fall off into year two. But some others, they have an adequate season, or they may be labeled as busts. But regardless of how their first season goes, there are plenty of players that are poised for a leap in year two. This week, Pudge is going to begin a 4-part series on potential sophomore studs, one position each week. And today we're going to begin with wide receivers. So without further ado, Pudge, it's you.
Hey. All right. So we all know that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be the next Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, but he wasn't, right? Or was he? Where he's getting drafted right now in PPR is 16th. I think that's criminal. As it stands, he was throwing the ball 114 times. Now, of that 114 times, only 59% of those were catchable. That's egregious by anybody's standards. And you have to think that Kyler Murray and McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. are going to be the only ones catching balls out of there, or throwing balls and catching balls. I don't think Kyler's going to catch anything, but last year his numbers are pretty deceiving. If you look at one of the other top guys who I'm going to bring up next, Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey had 112 targets compared to Marvin Harrison's 114. Of those, he caught 82. Now, you have to look at the offenses for the Cardinals, and you have to look at the offenses for the LA Chargers. The Chargers are a team. They had more wins. They went to the playoffs. So they are going to command a better offense more normally, but they really didn't. The Cardinals ranked 18th and the Chargers ranked 19th in passing, and primarily because I think Mr. Harbaugh knows how to coach, and over there in Arizona, it's pretty tough. Now, as far as Harrison goes as a rookie in these standards, it's very deceiving. Justin Jefferson blew up the world in 2020. Jamar Chase did it in 2021. Puka did it in 2023. And then Malik Neighbors did it last year with 170 targets. So we're comparing these guys to outlier seasons. Now, Jeff, do you think that Marvin Harrison is being drafted way too late?
It's possible. I know I had several shares of Marvin Harrison Jr. We're going to talk about shares a little bit later in this episode, but again, it's hard. Everybody expects players to come out their rookie season and just perform phenomenally. I think the problem was the hype. I don't think it was so much the player as the hype. Everyone was hyping, Marvin Harrison as the next coming. And, it's very difficult for a player to live up to that, to that standard. And so I think in the second year, a lot of players perform second year, third year. And I truly expect Harrison to break out. There's no way that talent and his ability should keep him down. And I think he might be slightly underdrafted, especially in redraft. Again, a lot of people are going to hold out, but in dynasty, especially if you're in a dynasty startup, I don't know why you'd be waiting on him at all. You are muted. Hey, Pudge, you are muted.
Oh, so there we go. All right. Sorry about that. That's Josh Kimmel with our the Marv hype it's out of control as far as negativity. If you look at what the Cardinals did in the offseason, they told you exactly what they want to do. They're going to throw it to McBride. They're going to throw it to Marvin Harrison Jr., and they're going to run the ball with Connor. Now, they added defensive pieces, so that should lead to a better offensive output. And I think that them being ranked 18th, I think they've got a little bit of room to grow. Kyler had a subpar year as far as passing. I expect him to pull himself together to get a little better. And with his maturity, they said he's gained a bunch of weight. He looks like Deebo Samuel out there, or DK Metcalf out there with the shirt off. But I wouldn't buy into that hype. I'd buy in more to the fact that he had 114 targets, and targets are earned. Those balls will come back to the median, and 59% of those balls were uncatchable. So that is a huge outlier, and I really think that Marvin Harrison is going to be looked at with Brian Thomas Jr. out of the last class, as well as Malik Neighbors, and might even go up to the CeeDee Lamb area.
Okay. So who do you have next?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I've got, as I mentioned, Mr. Lad McConkey. Now, McConkey is a conundrum as far as getting him through the week, practicing, not injured. I really had a problem with him last year and always being on the injury report. But I'm not saying this is who he is or this is who he plays as. But there's some guys, AJ Green, Mike Evans. All of these guys are always on the injury report. Yet there they are every week producing fantasy points for us. He had 112 targets on that run base, that run centric offense over there with Mr. Harbaugh. Now, they didn't bring anybody in for tight end. We all thought they were going to bring in Colston Loveland. I say we, but there were plenty of analysts that thought they were going to bring in a tight end to fulfill one of those big slot roles, and they didn't. They brought in Trey Harris, and Amarian Hampton, Najee Harris. That tells me they're going to do the exact same thing, and he's going to get more comfortable over there, and he's going to catch a lot more balls, and hopefully the offense is going to be even better. What do you feel about Ladd and his opportunity, I guess, to become the one there over Quentin Johnston?
Well, I mean, McConkey was he was the main target source, wasn't he? I mean, you were just rattling off some of those stats. I think that McConkey is one who is going to continue to excel. Quentin Johnston has been, he has been under expectations. This is going to be his third season or fourth. I'm sorry.
I can look it up, but I believe it's his fourth.
Okay. So, I mean, Quentin Johnston has been, by fantasy, at least by, fantasy expectations, a considerable disappointment. And I think McConkey is going to continue to thrive in that offense. Like you said, especially given the way that Harbaugh wants to play it there in LA. So I don't see anything but upside for McConkey. And I agree with you that, as good as he was in year one, I think I hate this cliche, but the sky's the limit for McConkey in year two.
Yeah, I truly believe that as well. And then we've got our third guy. Do you want to say anything about it? Yeah, I'm giddy about him. I love him.
This is all you.
All right. So with the first round pick of the San Francisco 49ers last year was none other than Ricky Pearsall. And I know there is a lot of Juwan Jennings hype. All right. Let's put some context around that, right? Ricky Pearsall was battling an injury. Some extracurricular things happened. Man had a very expensive watch, got shot for it, paid the price, and that time off the field for him was detrimental. It was detrimental for all of his rookie campaign. And then week 17, he goes and plays the Lions, I believe it's week 17. And he puts up astronomical numbers. 8 for 141. It was crazy. It was a crazy game. But if you look at that game, he was showing the ability to beat man coverage. In man coverage, as we know, a lot of teams have gone away from it, but a lot of wide receivers, they can't beat it. They have very, very rigid routes that they're not able to accelerate at the catch point and make those tough catches. Well, he did that. Over the course of Ayuk's time with the San Francisco 49ers, you've seen him be the efficient wide receiver. Well, I think that's Ricky Pearsall's role. Ayuk on the ACL MCL tear in week 7, he's gonna be gone for, I would say, he's past the pup week. We've seen players get rushed back, and then J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan, I can't think of his name, running back for Carolina. Last year, they rushed him back, and what did he do? He tore his ACL right again. The way that the science is with these players, the way that these guys push themselves through training, I don't see them rushing him back, especially with that big contract. He's got a lot of guaranteed money that he signed for last year. That being said, George Kittle's the number 1. I'm not saying that Pearsall is going to be a world beater, but he could be a league winner this year where he's being drafted. He's shown a lot of growth in that last couple weeks, and we have another scrappy wide receiver out of the Detroit Lions who put together a string of 6 games when everybody was on the MASH unit. Everybody was on IR, and that's kind of what Ricky Pearsall did. Everybody was going down, and Amon-Ra St. Brown did the exact same thing, and everybody doubted him in his year 2. Don't doubt Ricky Pearsall. I know that he is in there's a lot of competition out there. Kittle, CMC, Jennings, but he is the future of the San Francisco 49ers. And Jennings, they can cut ties with him after 2025. So
according to the Fantasy Pros right now, they have him as wide receiver 39, and 86th overall. So you're talking about, what is that, about an early 8th round pick in a dynasty startup. How are you feeling about him at that position?
I'm willing to go. I'm willing to go in the 6th round. I know we talked about reaches, and that's a reach, but this player, he can beat the man coverage that they are going to need over with the San Francisco 49ers. That's the kind of ball they play. They play Brock Purdy's. He's Brock Purdy, right? He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Mahomes. He's going to place the ball, and it's going to be rickety. It's not going to be the best ball placement. And Ricky Pearsall is that guy that he has such a strong catch point, and he excels to it, that it's really hard to beat him.
And last question on this particular topic. Of those 3, Harrison, McConkey, Pearsall, you're on the clock. You have an opportunity. Which of those 3 do you want at their price point?
McConkey. Okay. Hands down. If I could have McConkey, I'd take him over the other 2. But Harrison's probably got the highest ceiling, but McConkey's got the solid support and everything. So dynasty purposes, I'm taking Ladd.
Okay, Detroit Lions center Frank Ragnow announced his retirement early this week. And, of course, as Detroit Lions fans, this causes us a little bit of grief as, he anchored that incredible offensive line the last many years. And with him gone, the question now from a fantasy perspective is, how do you think this impacts players like Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs?
Well, there's a few more players that are going to feed off of this, and I do think those 2 players are it. Jared Goff is bottom barrel of the league when they get pressure up the middle. If you want to go give Sean McVay a call, he'll tell you that he is a a great quarterback, but if you get anything up the middle like they did in the Super Bowl, they're toast. And that's okay, and that they were built to protect that. And without having Zeitler there, and without having Ragnow as your starting right guard and your starting center, I don't see a season like you saw last year. It won't be as dynamic as it was previous. Ragnow was a special player. It tore his pectoral muscle and played the next week. Like those are things that normal humans don't do. He was a leader on and off the field. Those guys emotionally, I think, are going to take a toll, as well as hello? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I was speaking to my camera.
Oh,
the other way off.
I thought you were talking to me. Sorry about that. But no, Ragnow, the emotional side of this, if you saw the Dan Campbell interview, well, Dan he's always in tears, but he was genuinely moved by Frank not being able to be there, and I think they knew. I think they knew in the draft. That's why they went Ratledge, and that's why they had Ratledge playing center during OTAs. But as far as Gibbs is going to get more dump offs, so his PPR is going to go up, but his touchdown total for the team, I think, is going to be down. Laporta, he'll get, again, he'll have a season more like his rookie season, I believe. Any other players you want to talk about? As far as
I think that again, when you have that kind of pressure, Goff is certainly not going to be able to enjoy the time back there to set up and allow routes to develop, to allow players to get open that he's been able to do the last couple of years. I think you already mentioned it. JMO is probably going to be one of the individuals who is going to suffer the most from this, because his success is predominantly on the longer routes. Now, again, he has run a lot of slots. He has run a lot of crossing patterns that he has taken advantage of especially the last season. He looked really good in that role. And if they can get him open quickly, get him the ball quickly, and allow him to use his speed to break a play, then I think JMO can benefit. But to try to take the long shot is going to be very difficult this year compared to last. So I think you're really going to be relying on those quick hitters, which means passes in the flat. You're going to be and when pressure's on, he's going to need to dump off quickly to someone like Gibbs or Laporta. Another person who could really benefit from it is someone like Brock Wright, who is a tight end that has been utilized a few years ago. He kind of was a shining star for the Lions late in the season. So you could have auxiliary tight ends who also benefit from this, where, of course, that would be taken away from Laporta. I don't see it necessarily hurting Laporta and Gibbs. If anything, I see it helping. I think overall it's going to be a change in strategy, unless Glasgow and the Rook can come through and just surprise us all and be able to cover for Ragnow. I do know there was one stat, and I do not recall where I saw it from, and I don't remember actually the actual stat, but it was amazing. The difference between, this was from the 2023 season, the difference between completion rate, quarterback pressures, and so on with Ragnow out. I think he was out 2 or 3 games in that season, 3, I believe, versus when he was in. It was significantly different. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to see a little bit with Ragnow out now, is a lot of pressure. I think Goff is his interceptions are going to increase significantly. We'll see how his completion percentage fares, but I think that's also going to go down. So I think if you're looking to fade a player at all, if you have him and you were using him, is Jared Goff.
Yeah, well, and we can't deny the fact that Zeitler was an All-Pro too. So losing both of those guys, captains of the offensive line, it's going to be it'll be a big blow for the offense, but I don't see it being too detrimental to Gibbs's stats.
Well, players need fantasy points and stats to be deemed studs, but a stud is only determined once we understand how a normal performance is defined. And is normal across all positions? So with any startup, the commissioner, along with other league stakeholders, they must establish scoring rules. And while leagues all start with kind of a standard scoring foundation, these are almost always revised to accommodate league format, other league rules, like especially rosters and lineups, GM preferences, and a desire for an experience unique from other leagues. We all like a league that has, the same, or excuse me, a different, experience. When adjusting the scoring, some leagues like to emphasize specific positions. Others focus on skills or involvement, such as carries, receptions, attempts, targets, etc. There's also league rules that reward accomplishments such as first downs, bulk yardage plays, and so on. But when does scoring favor a position beyond what we would consider reasonable? Pudge, you and I have discussed this a lot in the past. Do you believe positional scoring can be lopsided beyond what you like or what is acceptable?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the goal, right? Nobody wants to have one super nerfed position. When you look at players, and they have these astronomical games. I think Jamar Chase has had a couple of 50-point games, right? There's a couple of guys out there that have had those. But when you see those continually happen, that's poor league management, I guess. You shouldn't have a player that's an outlier like that as far as fantasy is concerned. Now, if you've got kickers, just get them out of your league. They drag down your score, and they are inconsistent, and they should be just scrapped out of the league.
Well, you know me, I was slow to come around to the elimination of kickers, but I am fully on board now. And any startup that I would have today would not include kickers and may not even include scoring defenses or DSTs as a team. But unless there's an intentional purpose for lopsided scoring, I believe it's important that you develop a scoring strategy that will fairly represent that position's contributions. And that's something that doesn't always happen. I mean, for me, I'm a firm believer that regardless of whatever premiums and bonuses are applied, or on the flip side, penalties that may be applied for performance, the playing field should be equal. And that is exactly why I like models that are based on equal scoring for median performance across positions. Now, in 2009, Pudge, when we first created the Dirty Dozen Dynasty Fantasy Football Federation, that was our first ever IDP Dynasty League. Well, in fact, for me, it was the first IDP league I had ever been in. And we immediately recognized that the scoring favored linebackers significantly versus linemen and defensive backs. What were your thoughts on that first season that we had in IDP?
Well, it was a learning experience, wasn't it? And that's okay. Those things are okay. If we're always winning, we're not learning a lot. We took a position that already tallies enough, enough on the score sheet, and then we added to it, which made it kind of counterintuitive. We should have been adding points to DB and defensive line. Those hybrid players the ones that are designated for defensive line and linebacker. Those are the ones that pose the biggest problem for us, because you could just throw a linebacker right into a defensive line position, and he's now scoring more than, let's say, Nick Bosa. You got a guy over there he's just killing it in a defensive line position at a linebacker position normally on his team. And that's where it comes into play, where you have to play with the structure and the scoring, as far as coming together and trying to figure it out. It's a lot of trial and error. I think this has been, I don't know how many seasons we've actually changed the score, but I think this is the only season we haven't changed the score, because I think we're about where we need to be.
Well, we tweaked for year 2. Definitely, we were tweaking that to try to balance out the scoring. That was the first COVID season in 2020, and we still had a huge imbalance. And I think a lot of that was because, as novices in IDP, especially with the way that the scoring stats stacked, we didn't realize just how significantly certain plays could just get out of control. And when we were looking at that after that second season, we started realizing that on the IDP side, I think, what was it, the top 50 performers were all linebackers. It wasn't until the early 60s that we actually had a non-linebacker that was scoring. And we found that considerably problematic. And again, we were novices, we didn't know. And it's one of those things where we had to, tweak and learn as we go. We researched it a lot. And a lot of times when you're new to a format, especially when you have other GMs that are new to the format, I think everyone was new to IDP. I think we had a couple people who had dipped their toes into it, but they didn't really have a full understanding. It became a little bit of work. But I think after several seasons of tweaking, I know the one thing that we did was, I think in year 3, we did a very loose and unscientific method to apply new scoring to historical data to find that median performance for each position. We were trying to say, how do we get a defensive back to equate to a linebacker? And a lot of that was to determine, hey, what is an average or median defensive back performance to a linebacker performance? And then we had to try to tweak the scoring to try to accommodate that. Now, part of the problem is, especially in Sleeper, that's the platform we have this league on, they don't offer the same flexibility that, say, a platform like MFL offers. And so it's really difficult to necessarily provide scoring, like for defensive linemen. There may be stats that can be utilized for a defensive lineman that just simply aren't available on Sleeper. So there's not a lot. A defensive lineman, unless you're the hybrid lineman, linebacker known as edge, it's really difficult to have a high scoring defensive lineman. There are outliers, and there are those who do get their plays, but it's not consistent. And so it makes it very difficult to even want to start a defensive lineman. I think, and that's another reason why in our consortium league, we do not have defensive line, or excuse me, that's amalgam, not consortium. In amalgam, we don't even have defensive linemen in our starting lineup. We have linebacker, defensive back, and then we have flex, because nobody wants to start a defensive lineman. And that's sad, because again, that's a position that should be included in your defensive players. But again, it wasn't perfect by any stretch, but you agree, we saw an improvement on that. So I think,
Jeff,
yeah.
When we go into the off season and stuff like that, isn't that some of the fun?
I think so. I think it gives us something to talk about. I think in a world where people like to disappear and not show up for a few months, I think one of the things that allows us to remain engaged is to throw these things out. People discuss and complain about them all year long during the season. Some will throw out proposals. Some will just, they'll do their 2 seconds of griping and then move forward. But I think this gives everybody an opportunity to discuss it while they're not looking at their lineups, while they're not considering contests, and anything that allows off-season discussion is fun and is a useful topic. So I agree with you 100% there. So the one thing, going back to this, we were talking about the balanced, or the median performance. One of the reasons I like that is I want to be able to say that, hey, a quarterback that performs at the median, in other words, we won't say average, but at the median, this quarterback performing at average, this running back at average, this wide receiver at average, they should all score the same thing. So let's just assume you and I are playing head to head. You start 1 QB, 6 RBs, 3 wide receivers, and 0 tight ends. I start 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. Now let's assume each and every one of those players performs at the median. Again, they're all the median for their position. Should that game end in a tie? I say yes. What say you?
In theory, theories are great, but they never happen. If it were a perfect world and those positions all ended exactly at the median, yeah, it would be a tie. That's why we get kickers out of there, right?
Well, I just think it's something where if you're trying to find a way to get these positions to be on an equal footing, that's where you start. And I'm not saying there may be 1,000 sources out there on the intrawebs that discuss this and address this. I've not seen them, but I don't do the research that others do. If there is something out there like that, hey, please hit me up and let us know, because I would love to be able to utilize this. One of the things that I asked to have discussed at the Fantasy Football Expo for Fantasy and Frames IDP discussion or panel is to talk about how they define a scoring model for cornerbacks and defensive linemen along with linebackers. So I'm eagerly awaiting that panel come August.
Yeah.
So scoring models are essential for us to evaluate player performances relative to all contributions effectively. Once studs or anticipated studs are identified, many GMs strive for as many shares of that player as possible. Now, off-season transactions are completed, drafts are in the books, and then you begin to review your rosters, and unbeknownst to you, someone has placed the same player on many or most of your teams. Now, why would someone do this to you? I don't know. While many GMs purposely target players several times as part of their roster build strategy, others, like me, are often the victim of the other 11 fools who somehow accessed my account and drafted the same guy. But seriously, we all know there is nothing wrong with the same player residing on many rosters as long as it serves a winning strategy. Many GMs, however, they avoid, having too many shares to avoid susceptibility of a player's performance or poor performance or injury. Pudge, how do you approach multiple shares of players?
Well, first, a lot of it has to deal with where you draft, right? If you're drafting at the position 5 and 6 in every single draft, a lot of those same players are going to be available to you, right? I mean, that's just the way they fall. But I always try and diversify my dynasty rosters. If you fail and you have a lot of dynasty players that are all the same, you're going to have a tough time for a few years as far as going after a championship with a player that has failed you on several teams. Now, redraft is a lot different. A lot of people drafted CMC last year, and I had the privilege of doing the same thing, and it didn't work out too well. Now, I only had one share of CMC, so I was lucky, and that was by design because I knew all the things that were happening that year. Um, while he was in training camp, he hadn't really done too much. His tendonitis really flared up, and I took the flyer on, hey, this could be the running back 1 overall. And on my other teams, I said, hey, this guy could not play until week 9 or 10 from the pup list. And those are things you have to weigh. Ceiling is not always the best as far as picking your players and grouping them together, especially if they've got a checkered medical history like CMC.
Well, I do not shy away from multiple shares, especially when it's based on a sound strategy. But I also find myself rostering the same guy with no real justification. We're going to talk about a guy here in a moment. But for me, my accumulation of shares kind of falls into 4 categories. And I'll let you tell me if I'm missing something. One is a stud that no one would ever not roster if given the chance. I mean, there's a player you're going to, if you can have Jamar Chase, you're going to have him on your roster. There's no reason not to have multiple shares of someone like that. The second is strategy that the player legitimately serves. So I'm looking for a certain type of player that is going to meet my objectives in several different leagues. If that player will meet that objective, then I'm definitely going to target that person. The third is simple draft BPA. It's the best player available. It's like you just said, if you're in a certain draft position, a lot of these rookie drafts all go the same. You and I have been through several of them already. We've seen the same players going around the same time. There could be little differences depending on league rules. Is it a 1 QB, super flex, etc.? But for the most part, the players are going all in the same spot. And so for me, it's sometimes, hey, this is the best player available, and I'm just taking that player, even if I've had him in other leagues. And then finally, the stash with the hope the player will live up to the hype. And I have one particular player I'm going to mention in a moment. But does this about cover it, Pudge? What am I missing?
No, you hit the nail on the head. And we all have like that last one is a big one for me. He's that guy, the one missing piece that your team needs to win the championship because you believed in him and the rest of the crew didn't. I don't think that you missed anything at all, but I love that last part because I think that hits everybody right here in the heart.
Well, I think 2 and 3, well, especially 2, we'd all love to say that we have a really strong strategy, and so we're using players for those strategy. Again, that is someone. There are plenty of GMs out there who put in the work and do what they need to do for each of their rosters, and they target certain players, and they believe certain players. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, you could stack players. I know a lot of people get a huge share of a player through stacks, but that's what you're talking about. You're the build of the team. So I wanted people to realize like there are strategies that will have you having shares of the same player over and over and over.
And I'm glad you brought up stacks because next week we will be touching on stacks in our next episode. So is there a particular position you target for shares?
Wide receiver. Always wide receiver. Those are the guys that are the most consistent. They're the least likely to get injured. I don't really care about quarterback. Quarterback changes so frequently as far as who the next big guy is. You can always get a mediocre quarterback unless you've got one of the top 5 guys. But wide receiver is where I like to have the most shares of the best guys.
Well, I think wide receiver, especially someone who is going to be, low floor, very high potential ceiling. I think wide receiver is the position where you're going to find that most. It doesn't mean you can't find it at other positions, but that has been the position that I agree with you. That's the position where you're typically going to be able to stash somebody in hopes that they're going to find a role on a team and be able to excel. It doesn't mean I haven't, tried someone else. A particular player is Jerome Ford. I had numerous shares of Jerome Ford, believing that, his role was going to be significant. And with Chubb injury and so on, he did play an effective role. He was never going to be a superstar, but he was someone who did actually, get some performance. And it's still going to be interesting to see how he's utilized this year. But with Junkins there, but that was a player that was a running back that I took a lot of shares of when he was available, especially because of where it was. Who was it? Jaylen Warren.
Jaylen Warren. I had him on almost every team because he was so cheap.
Yeah, he was. Jerome Ford, I can't remember when I got him. It was late third, maybe. I think that's when it was. I can't keep. It amazes me how so many out there keep track of exactly when they drafted people. I can't remember, and I don't have nearly as many leagues as some of you do out there. But for me, I know I got him somewhere between 101 and 512. That's what I know. And that's good enough for me. If I need to look it up, I will. So what player did you have significant shares that worked well for you?
Worked well. DJ Moore. He never became that guy that I always wanted him to be, but he was always really, really solid. Another player that I had a ton of is Lamar Jackson. I don't know how or why, but that guy always ended up on my team. And so far, so good, right? But those two guys, they found their way on a lot of my teams, and I was happy to have them most of the time. DJ Moore had some disappearing acts, but other than that.
Well, I have to go back to 2017, and it was right around the time that I really started in Dynasty Leagues. Before that, I was mostly redraft, and then I found the wonderful world of Dynasty. And the player that I had in almost every league was Alvin Kamara. Now, at that time, if you remember, Mark Ingram and Adrian Peterson were the RBs in New Orleans, and there wasn't a whole lot of talk about Kamara. But right around, it was like right at the end of camp or right at the very beginning of preseason, I remember a lot started coming out about his performance. It might have even been week 1 in the preseason. And suddenly Kamara was a hot topic, but a lot of people that I played with at that time hadn't heard of him or what he had been doing. So I was able to jump on him in numerous leagues. And that is one person, that just obviously worked out for me very well. My problem is I traded him in a couple leagues thinking, he would eventually fade, and he didn't. But I also want to, how many of us out there had him in the championship game the year that he went off for 6 touchdowns and that took us to the ship. So, or won us the ship. So that was, I was very happy to have Alvin Kamara on my team. So on the flip side, the most painful multi-share player I had recently was none other than Sky Moore. Now, one analyst in particular, I will not name, was so extremely enamored with Moore that contagion inflicted me to a degree that I will never live down. And I went all in on this player.
Yeah, you did.
And that was catastrophic. Not only because, I remember being excited when he caught that Super Bowl touchdown. And I thought, here we go. This is the catalyst to future fame for Sky Moore. And, by that time, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I had so many shares I could do nothing with. And I didn't want to drop him. I held on for so long because I just was holding out hope that I did not just exhaust so much draft capital on Sky Moore but I ultimately ended up dropping him. I even tried to get people to draft him last year in the Scott Fish Bowl in exchange for me paying for their check, but it never happened. So I no longer have any, as everyone else in the fantasy football world, I no longer have any shares of Sky Moore. So what about you? Who is your most painful?
Oh, Darius Geis. I wanted him so bad. I took him, and it was a complete disaster. Now, albeit it was a complete disaster due to injury. Much like Jonathan Brooks, I think is going to be he's going to have a terrible career due to injury. But that is a lesson learned. Do not put that much capital into a running back on your dynasty team, especially one that's never taken a snap.
Agreed. Well, GM should always apply strategy to the accumulation of player shares. Pudge and I will never turn away from shares of our favorite suds. Pudge, kick us off.
I got a special one for you today, sir.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's summertime, baby. Yes, she's here. She's beautiful. She's tasty. She is strawberry lemonade in a beer. You can't get more your taste buds will have a party for you once you drink this beer. Have a natter day.
I have been to a lot of parties that I've wanted to leave right away, and I'm certain that's the party I would want to bolt on right away.
Oh.
Let's go to a real beer here. So I got from Saugatuck Brewing in Saugatuck, Michigan. I have barrel-aged vanilla imperial milk stout. It's a 10.5% ABV beer. Anyone who knows anything about Saugatuck, their big stout is the Neapolitan stout. They also have barrel-aged Oppenheim barrel-aged stout that's really incredible. This one I've not had, so I'm going to pour this one. Once again, the motor oil, not quite as thick. It's a little bit, it's a little more translucent than, if you want to call this translucent, than the one last week. But still, this is looking good. So this one again, a vanilla imperial milk stout, 10.5%. Saugatuck Brewing. On the west side of the state, in it's actually not in Saugatuck, it's outside of Saugatuck. I can't remember the town it's in. I think it's called Douglas. It's I don't know if it's on this can. Doesn't really matter, but I believe it's in Douglas, Michigan. So if you're ever traveling the west side of the state, hit up Saugatuck and try out some other beers. So cheers.
Yes, sir.
Also, while we enjoy these beers, as a reminder, please always drink responsibly. And if you are out, always have a plan for safety before you drink. So we love beer, especially when attending a sporting event. Food and beverage, however, needs food. So what food is in one hand with a beer in the other? So the NFL regular season is still a quarter of a year away, but baseball is now 2 months in. And there is nothing better than the football tailgate. But when it comes to stadium food, how does anyone go wrong with traditional baseball fare? Popcorn, chips, and cotton candy, those may be on the list for some. But for me, I have to have hot dogs at the baseball park. Now, I will substitute a delicious brat when necessary, but baseball equals hot dogs for me. Pudge?
You're not wrong. And when I'm at a baseball game, it is a brat. I have to have one of the big brats, mustard, pickle, not sweet. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Sweet relish is for kids. But that dill with that mustard and the brat, that's awesome. And then maybe some onions. I don't know if you want to go there, but your lady friend or your wife or your partner in crime may not like you after onions as they saturate their nose their nose on the way home.
Well, my wife loves onions and she loves garlic, so it's not going, a lot of garlic, so she is not going to be offended by onions. But now I love cooked onions. Really love cooked onions, but I do not like raw onions on anything with one exception, the hot dog. A hot dog with diced onions is a must. And now, are you an onion guy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. onions, coney sauce, mustard is like the perfect hot dog for me. And
Now,
I mean, Detroit is known for them, so
now Detroit, their Coney dogs are incredible.
yeah.
You cannot go wrong with a Detroit style Coney dog anytime. You know, there are other great places for hot dogs. I love Chicago style hot dogs. Again, you were talking about mustard.
The hot peppers.
Obviously, a ketchup bottle cannot be found within a 50-mile radius of downtown Chicago or anywhere in that vicinity. But I love a Chicago style hot dog. I love a Seattle style hot dog. It's an interesting twist on a hot dog with the cream cheese, but that's another very delicious hot dog. I love hot dogs. I don't eat them very often, but if I'm at a ball game, I'm eating hot dogs.
So, little story. I know we're almost at time, but in the Navy, there's this place. It's called Tijuana, and it's the border. And right across that border is San Diego. And when you're coming home from Tijuana, and you may have had a couple of beverages, there's nothing better than a bacon-wrapped, cheese-filled hot dog from one of the vendors. Now, if you have a couple of those, you're ready for a nice ride home.
Sounds a lot better than my Taco Bell order, so I'll take that anytime. That sounds really good. Anything with bacon, and you wrap anything in bacon, it's great. But a hot dog with bacon sounds absolutely delicious.
They were awesome.
Oh, I imagine. For a football game, I'm all about popcorn and nachos, but so I won't really do popcorn at a baseball game, but at a football game, I'm doing popcorn, I'm doing nachos. But what I'm really looking for are the roasted almonds. That is my target every game to find it. And it can't be one of the bags that was roasted earlier or transported from another location. We're just left sitting there. They have to be the ones that are fresh and warm.
Warm.
The ones you usually have to tip really well in order to get. So those are incredible. What do you do for football?
Football, I absolutely have to get one of the pizzas usually. It's just one of my things. We go to football games quite frequently. Chicken tenders actually have become one of my favorite things at the football game in the stadium over at the corner lounge. It sounds childish, but those big chicken tenders are awesome. And they're just always there to snack on. So I really love those. Yeah, I really love those chicken tenders and to get a pizza like towards the third quarter when you're kind of getting hungry again.
What's the most bizarre thing that you've ever seen, that you've ever eaten or seen at a stadium or arena?
I don't know about bizarre, but they've got like those Slim Jim straws for Bloody Marys that I've seen. And I personally love them. I think it gives the Bloody Marys a different, kind of feel. Special, and it's like $75. So it's nice to feel a little special. But I love those. I think they're cheesy, but I love them.
Hey, and by the way, Bob and Becky are showing up for our home draft in August, and her Bloody Marys are. My wife is so excited. Those Bloody Marys are incredible. I don't know if she uses those straws, and I don't know if I could use that straw because I would end up eating the straw before I was finished with the Bloody Mary. So I don't know what I would do then. But anyway, no, the Bloody Marys, even at Ford Field, are incredible. For me, I think sushi, stadium sushi. To me, that's like gas station sushi. I don't quite understand it. Now, I love sushi. But I'm also a very selective person when it comes to sushi, and I'm just not prepared to eat sushi outdoors on a 90-degree day whether they keep that sushi on ice or not. That's just something. It may be fresh, it may be delicious. People, they have to be buying it because they continue to offer it, but it's just not something I can't do it.
Well, no, people buy spray cheese too, but I don't eat that either. I don't think I've seen it. I don't know if it's at Ford Field, but that sounds awful.
No, it's at Comerica Park. If you're on the lower level, especially somewhere between the bases, right around behind home plate, it's there. At least it was. Now, again, Comerica Park went through some renovations recently. I don't know if they also renovated or moved some of their concession vendors and booths, but it was there, and it was there for a while, and it just made no sense to me. But hey, just give me my hot dogs. Pudge, where do we find you?
You can find me over at Blue Sky at fflapudge.fantasynowplus.com and X at ff_LaPudge.
And I can be found on X at ffcommish_YIS and on Blue Sky at ffcommish_YIS.fantasynowplus.com. We want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to us. It's been excellent. Our next episode will be Friday, June 13 at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific. Follow us. Follow Fantasy Now Plus on Discord, TikTok, Blue Sky, and subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Until next time, for C.J. Pudge LaPage, I am Jeffrey Crisp. Be good, be kind, be responsible, and cheers.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.